Good afternoon everyone. My name's Pamela and I'm a Stampin' Up demonstrator from Australia. Today I'll be creating this card for you. It's with the Tranquil Tulips and I'll be cutting out this little picket fence from one of the dies from the seasonal layers. The cardstock we'll be using today, as I'm in Australia, we use A4 size cardstock, so it's a piece of Whisper White. It's cut down the middle and folded and scored to create a top folding card base. We'll also be using another piece of Whisper White that is the same side as the front of the card base, and we'll be stamping on that our flowers and then embossing it with the brick wall embossing folder. The other piece of cardstock is just a piece of lightweight cardstock that I'll be stamping a sentiment on for the inside of the card. The stamp sets we'll be using today are Tranquil Tulips. I'll be using the little small tulip, the stems and a couple of the different leaves. For the chair, I'll be using the seasonal layers thinlet dies and cutting out the chair a few times and then cutting them down further to make the picket fence. From the Big on Birthdays, we'll be using the happy birthday for inside the card, and we will also be using this grass from the Daisy Delight stamp set. The stamps that we'll be using today are made of the photopolymer, so it's a good idea to use our piercing mat underneath our cardstock that we're stamping on, just for a little bit of cushion, so it gives a cleaner, crisp image. The colours we'll be using today, our new colours: Lemon Lime Twist, Powder Pink and Berry Burst. They're all new colours in our new catalogue this year. Okay, so we'll get started, and first of all we will stamp the stems with the Lemon Lime Twist. I just stamped this just up from the bottom a little bit. I don't want the stems to go off the bottom edge of the cardstock. We're just stamping on our separate piece of cardstock that I showed you at the beginning. Now we'll just stamp some of the leaves. Just be careful when these stamps are very juicy. Sometimes a bit of stray ink gets on the block. So it's best to wipe it off so that you don't get it on your card piece. Just filling in the gaps with the smaller leaves. And now, so that I don't go off right to the bottom of the card piece, I just put in a bit of masking paper. It's just a bit of typing paper that I just folded, popped on at the edge of the bottom of the piece that I'm stamping on, and then just stamped my grasses. As you can see, then it's nice and even down on the bottom now. Now we're going to stamp our tulips. The tulip set's a 2-set stamp, and we're just going to stamp the base of the first stamp on our card piece here. We're not going to do the 2-step at this stage because we'll be doing it later. I'll be stamping the 2 steps later on a separate piece of cardstock, and then I'll be fussy cutting them out. All I'm doing here is creating a shadow for underneath the tulips that I'll be adding with dimensionals later. Now I've run the piece of cardstock that I've stamped through the embossing folder. That looks nice as is. Now I'm stamping over the top of the original tulips that I stamped. I changed my mind here, and I felt that they weren't bright enough and rich enough. So I've got the berry burst out, I'm stamping off, and I'm stamping over the top of the powder pink. I just changed my mind. Now on a separate piece of cardstock, I'm just doing the two-step stamping with the tulips with the berry burst ink. Berry burst is a really rich, beautiful colour. Adding the stamens, I'm not using black at this stage, I'm just using the basic grey. It's just a softer look. What I'll do now is I'll fussy cut these tulips out. All fussy cutting is using a pair of scissors, cutting round the image. And as you can see here, I try and keep my scissors in the same spot, and I move my cardstock. And if you can do it like that, it seems to give a smoother finish to the cutting edge. So they're all cut out now. They look nice using dimensionals. And I'll attach all the tulips to the cardstock I have in front of me there. You only need one dimensional per flower here. They're not very big. Just lining those up and popping those on the front of the card. You can see that they're behind the first initial stamp that I did on the card base. It creates a shadow. I just think it looks nicer than having just blank white behind the tulips. Now to create my little picket fence, I've already cut out a couple of them, and I'm just showing you how I cut out the other one to make the third piece. I was originally only going to use 2 pieces, and I thought another piece would look good. It's a bit fiddly lining these up because they fan out and they don't stand up straight. The center one's okay, but the other two on the other side fan out. Just going to use my reverse tweezers here to pick this up and to place on the cardstock. Saves you getting glue all over all your fingers. Using Tombow for this. It's a liquid glue. You just get a little bit of wiggle room, as everyone comments on, and it saves you sometimes because you need that little extra time. Just putting the second one down now. People have been very creative with this die. They've made lots of different things out of it. Tables. Oh, lots of different things. It's just a wonderful die set. The whole bundle is an excellent buy. So many different things you can make with it. Now the last piece is going down. And after I put this down, you'll see that the bottom edge is not straight and does look a little messy. So what I've decided to do is to stamp a sentiment on the front and make it the whole width of the card base down the bottom. So I've stamped it in black memento ink, the sentiment. I'm just using some Tombow because it's an uneven surface, and the Tombow liquid glue is the best glue to use it for this circumstance. Now that's just going to cover up that messy bottom on it. Just putting some Tombow on the back of this. As you can see, I made a mistake on the first when I was first creating this card. But you never want to waste any cardstock. There's always two sides to a piece of cardstock. And you can't see it, so just lining this up on the front of on the card front, or on the card base. It's the same size as the card base, so there's no edging on the side. There might be just a tiny fraction. Now the happy birthday sentiment that I'm using for the inside of the card is quite big, so I've decided to use the Misty. And because the stamp set's new, I wasn't sure how it was going to stamp, and I didn't want to waste any cardstock, so I'm just popping it on the piece of cardstock there, lining it up. I'll pick it up with the lid of the Misty. See, it's a new stamp. It's very sticky. It's still really extremely sticky, so it lifted that paper up, but I can just reline that up and pop it in there and push it into the corner of the Misty. I'll ink up the stamp now. I'm going to use Berry Burst. It's a beautiful colour. I love it. Close over the lid, press down. I usually just hold it for a few seconds and lift up. Now that's stamped really nicely. Now if it hadn't stamped quite so clean and crisp, I would have been able to re-ink and just close the lid over again and re-stamp it. Just used a bit of snail on the top of this piece and inserted it into the center of the card. And that's my card for the day. I hope you'll like it. I think it just is so pretty. I love the little picket fence. If you would like to purchase any of the products, below the video is a list of supplies used with the clickable links to my Stamping Up 24/7 online store. I would appreciate it if you would use this month's code for the month, M73JPPPE. Stamping has some fabulous promotions on this month. All the information you'll find below. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, click the thumbs up, and please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of my card. Thank you. See you next time.